All right. Can you give me a thumbs up that you can see that and that's working the way it's supposed to? Thank you so much. Yes, I'm Crystal Clark. I am an organizational learning specialist with the Center for Leadership and Organizational Change. I'm not on campus right now, but I'm super excited to be joining you all virtually to talk about this really important topic because I know that change, first of all, is the only thing that is constant. And I know that all of us are going through a lot of change right now, whether that is at work, at home, in the world. And so just want to offer you a bit of a larger session that we do on managing change. My hope is that you walk away today understanding a couple of things. One is that there's a difference between change and transition, and hopefully you go through both of those things and you actually need to go through both of those things, you as a supervisor and also the people that you supervise. The second is thinking through the different phases that people may experience as this happens. And then I want to think through a little bit about your role as a supervisor and how you can help people move through change while at the same time helping yourself as well. In the chat, the first thing I would really love to hear from you all is how would you like to show up for yourself and for the people that you lead when it comes to change and transition? How do you hope they feel in your presence, or how do you hope they would describe you as you are supporting them through this process? What would be ideal for you? So share that for me in the chat. Trustworthy. I love that, Julia. Thank you so much. And so important, so important. Absolutely. What else? Calm, competent, and open. I love that. CCO. Fantastic, Eric. Thank you, Taylor. Flexible and curious. Absolutely wonderful. Eric got a little thumbs up there. Fantastic. Flexibility. Yes, flexibility. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So that is wonderful. Steady. Yes, Jenna. Wonderful. You want a steady hand when things feel shaky. It's nice if, a person that you're working alongside, a person that's leading you is steady. Absolutely. I want you to keep this in mind because, like anything else, if you know what your goal is, how do you sort of reverse engineer yourself into that? If you want to be steady, not just appear steady, but be steady, I want you to think through what are the steps that you could take in order to sort of get yourself there. Because what we know as leaders is that you are also affected by what's going on. And sometimes we forget that. We think you all have it all figured out and you understand everything, but a lot of times you're just as shaky as the people that you're leading. So we want to make sure that you care for yourself along with them through this particular process. Chat away. Ooh, okay, awesome. We talk a lot about managing change, but our goal is to help people understand how to thrive through transition because transition is really the process. That is the process where all the work happens. The change, sometimes it's just happening to you. Your goal is to work through that change and go through the process of it. And also, in order for a change to be stable and to really take hold, and for people to really be able to fully step into it, they do have to go through that transition process. Sometimes we want it to be so urgent. You did this on Monday, you're going to do this on Tuesday. But people really aren't that quick when it comes to how they make changes in their life, especially when they've been doing their job and hopefully doing it well for a long time. We can't ask people to move that quickly. We have to allow them transition. So put this in the chat for me. I want to hear from you again. How do you describe change? Are you someone that's all about it? You see it as an opportunity, you see it as a way forward? Or are you someone that's like, it's scary and it's super hard and I'm not sure that I want to do it? How do you view change? Because it's so important that you get real clear about how you see it because that is going to impact how you work with the people around you. Oh, Taylor's like, I'm ready. Okay, Taylor, I'm going to change a lot of things for you this semester. Taylor's doing Sharpen My Saw with me this year. So, okay, I can't wait to see it. Absolutely. We have some uncertain there, an opportunity, inevitable. And Taylor, you're not a weirdo. That's just how you see it. We need people like you around, right? To help wrap some optimism around it. Yes? Yes. So all of these things that you can see popping up for your colleagues, very important. Miriam says it's inevitable. It absolutely is inevitable. It is going to happen, as you can see happening around you all the time. Absolutely. I love that. So this probably won't be hard for you. I know the university is twirling quite quickly right now, but I want you to think about some changes that are happening for you right now. What's going on? Are there some changes in the way your people work? If your people are able to work, because I know that's a reality for some of our colleagues, is there a change in what you're able to talk about or what you're able to cover? Is there a change in your budget? what is happening for you right now? And what we have to also be fully aware of, because we in CLOC really value a human first orientation when it comes to supervision. You all are whole people. So while work is changing, home could also be changing. Yes? Your team could be changing, your family could be changing, your office could be changing, a community organization that you're a part of. So I want you to think about some of these changes that could be happening for you or your people, because the thing is, all of these changes collide. And that can be very difficult for people to figure out, how do I prioritize my energy? How do I prioritize my human resources when everything seems to be shifting, right? So just think about that and understand how all of that works together. And that causes a lot of stress and anxiety. One big takeaway from the day is that you understand that change and transition are two different things. So change is that external situation. It's the actual event. It happens relatively fast, right? Situational change is happening. We have a new org structure. Some people won't be here with us anymore. Job titles are changing. Office names are changing. That is the change. It is happening outside of you. And I don't want people to think that change always has to be bad. Sometimes it's how we approach that conversation. Change could be really fantastic, could be quite empowering, according to Taylor, right? Because a change could be that you win the lottery tomorrow. That could be a change. And I know that would make me quite happy, right? That would be a great change. It's not always the change that does people in, it is the transition process, right? So I want you to think about that. And then also think about, this is what transition is. That's the internal psychological movement. That's what's going on inside of you. And it is quite slow. People go through it at their own pace and not necessarily the pace of the organization. And that's likely why you or other people that you work with, this workday thing was a big old change, right? People are going to be talking about that workday change for the next 10 years. Like they just are. It just as if they remember the old ways, and in some ways they value the old ways, and workday is still not sitting right with them, they're going to talk about it for a long time. That transition is going to happen for a while. So it's hard sometimes for people to let things go, letting go of that old way. And we're going to talk about why that's the case. I think it's not like me. But transition is the process of navigating control, of navigating change. And it's also really important that there are ways that you can work to help control your own transition, but also help other people to manage those as well, because that's really the only thing that's under your control. We know a lot of these changes that are coming up from on high, we have no control over them. We might be able to influence them, but we cannot control them. But maybe the way that we walk through it could be something that we could use our sense of agency. We use this model in CLOC. We use Schlossberg and we use Bridges, and it's kind of the same thing, just some different languages 5 years apart. But once again, I want you to understand that transition is a process for people, right? And the one that I tend to go with more is Bridges. I'm more familiar with that one. I actually learned about that one while I was a grad student at the University of Maryland years ago. But we think about that ending and that letting go. So think about any change that's going on right now. There was a signal that we're not going to be this way anymore. We're not going to use this anymore. Um, our team is not going to look like this anymore, right? Our identity will not be this anymore. That's that ending and that letting go. You then move into that neutral zone, which is the place of transition. That's when the old is done, but the new really isn't solidified. And it can be an area of great creativity and positivity, or it could be the place where we tend to lose people. And then we also have the beginning of the change. It's actually happening. It has been launched. This is who we are, and this is how we will operate for the foreseeable future. The same thing for this. We're moving in, we're moving through, we're moving out. Moving in, letting go, moving through, the neutral zone, and the moving out is the new beginning. So let's talk about these right now. And one of the things that I really want you to understand, and sometimes I think we lose it, there's a lot of feelings and emotions that go along with change and transition. Our people are not robots. And as you, as their supervisor, you have to tap into those feelings, right? People sometimes have been doing their work for a long time. They're very proud of their work. But change can spark a lot of emotions. And if those things aren't at least addressed or at least acknowledged, that can really harm people's movement through the transition process. And you, as their supervisor, sort of the closest person between them and the change, it's important to sort of honor that in a way of saying, I understand that people are feeling a certain way. I understand that this just isn't a switch that we're going to turn off tomorrow. There are some people that this is going to spark a lot of different feelings. I want you to look at this graph in front of you. We talked about that ending, letting go zone, right? Here are some things that people might be experiencing. You might be experiencing these things right now, right? If you look there, you see things like fear. You see things like disorientation. One of the quotes that I live by is by a name named Ronald Heifetz. He's a theorist who was at Harvard, and he talked about that it's not change per se, it's loss. When things are starting to change, people are losing something. They could be losing their sense of competence. They could be losing colleagues. They could be losing a particular philosophy or their belief in a certain place. They could be losing a schedule. They could be losing an office. It could be a lot of things that they could be losing, right? When we were off in the pandemic and people were working remotely, and then folks were maybe asked to come back to work, they were losing the sense of freedom of working remotely and not being at the office or commuting in. So, it's the loss piece that really sort of bothers people a lot more than the actual change. I am losing who I thought I was, or what I thought I was, or the comforts perhaps that I felt like I had in the workplace. As a supervisor, one of the key things that I want you to think about is how do you acknowledge what people feel like they are losing? How do you tap into that? And if they feel like they're losing something, some of those things you could say, well, listen, you might be losing this, but this is how this will look differently as we move forward. Or maybe I can't get that back for you, but what if we do it this way instead? But acknowledging that people could be feeling a sense of loss as a supervisor is super powerful, super powerful. Where you work and how you work is one of your identities. When you lose your identities, you will grieve. It is grief. It's absolute work grief. And so it's important to sort of help people acknowledge that and say what it is and try to help people through that as much as possible. As you're moving into that neutral zone, you could go either way, right? You see here that there is a sense of creativity, there is a sense of innovation. For some people, people who maybe are more positive about change or more optimistic, or at least about the change that's happening right then, they sort of feel like we're kind of in a neutral area. We know we're not doing A anymore, but we haven't got to C yet. So while we're at B, let's play around a little bit. Let's change some other things. Let's be creative. Let's think really open and freely about how we can move into the next stage of our work, into our team, into the university. And so you have people that will honor that. They'll push some of the boundaries. They'll ask some questions they wouldn't have asked the week before because things are kind of up in the air. Things are neutral and kind of free and they're kind of gray. So why not continue to create and innovate, right? Why not continue to sort of put some ideas out there and explore some ways that we can be new in a different and a better way now that we're moving towards the old way and towards something new. But then you have some people that in that gray area, they're very anxious. They're a little bit confused about what's going on. What's going to happen on the other end? Is this going to work? Why are we changing this anyway? Maybe there's some doubt about, oh, we're switching to this new platform, and I don't think I can learn how to use a new platform. I don't think I have that in me anymore. I'm not sure I can do what they're asking me to do. So there can be some doubt there as well. So, depending on who the people are, they will look at that neutral zone a little bit differently. What we often find in the research is that a great supervisor can help retain people through the neutral zone. But if they don't have powerful leadership, this is often where we lose people, literally or figuratively, right? They can actually say, I'm out. I can't deal with this ambivalence. No one's giving me any answers. I can't see the other side. I don't know if I like the other side. And so I'm just gonna depart. I'm out. I'm just gonna remove myself. But for some people, they check out figuratively. You know, we talk about that quiet quitting piece, right, that people talk about. They just sort of put their head down. And you might not see the same engagement from those people that you might have seen 3 weeks ago because they're like, I don't know what's going on, but I do want to keep this job. So I'm just going to kind of keep it low key, not stick my neck out and hope for the best. And that also is a loss for the team and a loss for the university, right? And then you see those feelings about that new beginning. There are still some people that will be unsure, but there also will be some people that will experience some relief because it has happened. There are some people who will have a lot of energy and excitement around it. They'll be great champions, right? They want to tell people about the change and how wonderful it is. And there will be a lot of people who are like, yes, this is what we're doing now, and I'm super committed to it. And there may be some comfort because we're not in transition anymore. The change has happened, and I know my role in the change. And I know that I'm going to be here. I know that my work matters. And now I know which button to push. And that's really important for me. So you can see through all of these stages, there are lots of feelings, right? And as a supervisor, your job is to really sort of see where are people on this spectrum and sort of what do people need and how can you help coach people and guide them as they go through the ups and downs of this process. Just quickly, and this is for you, but also for the people that you're working with, that endings piece, you can see some of the questions that might come out from your people and from you. Questions they might ask or statements they might make, just depending on how they feel about change. For a lot of people, I find at Maryland when I give this presentation, there are some people who say, well, I was here for the last change and I was here for the last thing. And well, they'll change again in 3 years. And so there's a lot of this is just another shiny thing, but we're going to have to learn it. And then before you know it, they're going to change it again. Right. And there's some people who are like, it's not a big deal. This is totally fine. This is just what we do. We'll learn it and we'll keep moving. But think about some of these questions that you might hear from people in that endings phase. Why weren't we told sooner? What did we do wrong? How is this going to help us, right? These are questions of people seeking clarity and they need communication. One of the most important things, the second most important thing that you can do as a supervisor, we talked about acknowledging loss, but how are you communicating with people? How are you telling them what's going on? And here's the thing that I know. Sometimes you can't be as transparent as you want to be. There are things that you are told that you need to hold close to you. But how transparent can you be? And are you sharing all that you can share? And are you even being communicative about there are some things that are just off the table, but I'm going to tell you what I can tell you? The other thing that I often know about supervisors is that you sometimes don't know as much as your employees think you know. So you also are seeking answers and information, going, God, I wish I knew that, but they didn't tell me that either. Right? I'm learning just as you're learning. But how can you also be open about that as well as saying, I don't know everything either. I'm learning like you're learning. We're learning together and we're learning alongside each other. And that is really important that I support you through this. But just know my goal is not to keep things from you in a way to hurt you, right? I'm communicating as much as I can. Because when you all don't communicate, guess what people start doing? They start making things up. They start assuming things. They start going through back channels trying to figure things out. They start gossiping. They can start spreading some toxic energy. And so in order to get in front of that, how are you being proactive about your communication as much as you possibly can? Because people just want to know what's going on. This is their work matters to them. This could be what they see as their purpose, and also it is their livelihood, right? So they may come and ask you questions and need some really good communication. So keep that in mind as well. In that neutral zone, here are some questions that people might start asking. What's going to happen? What's my new role? Once again, what am I losing? How else can I be here? For some people, the way that they came to Maryland will not be the way that they will end up after the change. So helping them to understand, here's your new way of being here and contributing, because people may need to hear that. They may need to know that. And here are some statements. You'll have some people that will just sit there and wait and they'll do as they're told. People who are like, I'm kind of tapping out. They don't pay me enough to think about this. And people who might say, well, what if we do this instead? Or what if I do this instead? And some people might start questioning, what if I left? What would happen? Okay. Look at that cute little butterfly. Why do people resist change? Put that in the chat for me. What are some reasons that people resist change? What's happening for them? What have you seen on the college campus since you've been here? Absolutely. Hi, Bonita. Fear. Absolutely. Yes, Deborah. Status quo is working. Yes, change is it's uncomfortable. Yes, don't have the time. all of these things, all of it, right? And we can see here where some of this resistance will take place. And I want us to look at this right here. First of all, it's predictable and it's normal. So as a supervisor, you got to kind of expect that that is coming your way. And also resistance can look quite different depending on the person. You're going to find some people that resist by being quiet. Like I said, they tap out. You're going to find some people that resist by being real loud. And they're going to let you know, nope, I'm not doing that. Absolutely not. Why are we doing this? I can't believe we're doing this again. So you're going to have some different people on your team that will show their resistance in different ways. They may refuse to do things the new way, step by step and piece by piece. And you may have to have more conversations with them about, hey, we don't do Form A anymore, we do B, right? So that is kind of subtle, but that's their way of resistance. So it's really important to tap into how are you seeing resistance from your people because you're going to have to address it in a different way. And for those people who are very open about their resistance, and once again, they're having those conversations which may affect the energy of everyone else, you may have to like head that off pretty quickly because you don't want that energy to spread amongst the rest of you. But it could happen. Everyone's got their style. Here are some reasons that we know that resistance occurs, and you already told us what it is, right? Stability. I thought everything was good, and now all of a sudden I feel unstable. Challenge to autonomy. Autonomy is very motivating for people. When people can self-direct their lives, including their work lives, that is very motivational. If I can have some autonomy over my time, my task, my team, and my technique, I feel a sense of empowerment. When you take that away from me, I resist because I want to hold on to that autonomy for myself. It may be a challenge to some sort of power. Um, Maybe, like you said, they do have a vested interest in the status quo. It works and it's helped me be successful, and I don't want to change it. I don't want to give up my privilege and power that I have here in the institution. And it may be a challenge to ideology. Things are happening that are a direct conflict with their deeply held philosophy and beliefs. And people don't want to work in a place where they feel that's the case. It's difficult to manage that sort of cognitive dissonance when there's a challenge to ideology going on. Other honorable mentions, as we call them, other things, right? And who is it said that earlier? Someone said that low trust. They want to be a very trustworthy supervisor. That is hands down the number one thing that you can do with your people. And you develop trust by building relationships. How are you spending time with your people? How are you getting to know them? Do you know their professional goals, how they're feeling about work, and how they're feeling about the change that's happening? Being there in those conversations, talking to them, learning about them, sharing a little bit about yourself, that helps to build that trust. And also being someone that they do see as perhaps steady, or this person is providing great communication, or I see that this change is also bothering this person too. My supervisor is actually a human. That's how you build trust, right? And so how are you, if there are people on your team that you're having some trust issues with right now, this might be a good time to dig in, right? Because that trust is going to be super foundational to you being able to lead them well through change and transition. For some people, it's about not being consulted. I know a lot of people who say, listen, I pushed that button all day long, and you all had a meeting about that button and didn't include me. That really hurts because I've been pushing that button for you all for years and doing it well. So why wasn't I at the table? So people feel a sense of hurt, right, around that. So there's a lot of other reasons that people resist, but it is important to know that as much as you can about the people that you work with, what's happening there. And there were more. For new beginnings, here are some questions people might ask, and there are some statements you can say it gets a little bit more positive there. In those new beginnings, it's really important to offer people support and resources so they can excel in that new beginning. All the webinars and learning communities we have for Workday, where we can pull people together and do some peer learning, all the tutorials and study guides that Shelby has produced, that has really helped people as much as they can get used to this new beginning. So how are you doing that with your people to help them really understand what's going on? The other tip that I want to give you is that you all have to model the behavior that you want to see from your people. It's very important as a supervisor. Are you a model of adaptability for your people? Or can they see clearly the stress and strife that this is causing you? But as a leader, are you saying to them, I understand this is difficult and this is what's happening. So let's figure out how we can do this together. And are you modeling the way for your people? It's actually really important. It's one of the roles of a leader, right? It's not that you meet them with the same energy that they're giving you, is that you elevate the energy. And you say, you know what, as a team, here's how we are going to approach this. And you have to model that for them. That's my third tip for you. You're acknowledging that loss, you're communicating clearly, and you're modeling adaptability. And the last thing that I really want you to think about is how can you clarify their roles and purpose as they go throughout that change and transition. People need to know their job, their position, what is happening to them. One of the, if you ever took, I think you all took the Q12 years ago. I'm not sure how long you all have been here, but one of the biggest measures of engagement in the workplace is, are you clear about what your job is? And when people aren't clear about what they're doing, they become deeply disengaged. So, as a supervisor, how are you being as clear as possible to say, yes, our org chart looks different, and here's where you are, and here's what you're doing, and here's are the new expectations, and here's how we're going to make sure that you can do this well. You have to clarify that for people because they need to know their purpose and their role and what this means for them in their life. So be very conscious about that as well. You're acknowledging loss, you're communicating clearly about what's happening around them, you're modeling the way and modeling that adaptability, and then you're clarifying that purpose and role. And if you can do those four things for your people, you're in a pretty good place when it comes to supervising them as you all thrive together through transition. Okay, I'm out of time. So, yeah, if you have any questions or anything, you can put them in the chat, and you can also always reach out to CLOC, and we'll be happy to provide you with more. We have a longer session on this, and so I'm happy to do that for a group of you if you ever want that to happen. But just wanted to give you a sneak peek today.